The morning was quiet, the lake glistening like glass when Daniel stepped out of his cabin. But the peace shattered the moment he saw the paper tacked to his door. Bold red letters screamed, "Eviction notice. HOA violation." His chest tightened. How could they evict him from the home his grandfather had built long before the HOA even existed? The notice accused him of unauthorized residency and demanded he vacate within 7 days. Daniel laughed bitterly. His cabin wasn't a weekend retreat. It was his sanctuary, his family's legacy. But the HOA president, Ms. Carver, had made it her mission to control every inch of land near the lake. Neighbors whispered that no one could stand up to her. She had fined families into silence, bullied newcomers, and used her position like a crown. But as Daniel held the paper, a quiet fire lit inside him. She didn't know his secret, because while the HOA controlled houses, Daniel controlled something much larger: the sparkling lake itself, and the only parking lot the HOA's residents needed to access it. And if Ms. Carver wanted war, she had just chosen the wrong battlefield. That evening, Daniel drove into town for groceries. As he returned, he found Ms. Carver waiting at the lake's edge in her sharp suit, clipboard in hand. Her smile was thin, practiced, and full of arrogance. "Mr. Hayes," she began, "this property falls under HOA regulation. You've ignored repeated warnings. You have 1 week to leave." Daniel didn't flinch. "This cabin was here long before your HOA. You don't have the authority." Her eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." Behind her, several HOA board members stood silently, as if guarding her throne. But the residents who passed by shot Daniel sympathetic glances. They too were tired of her heavy hand, but fear chained their voices. Daniel simply pointed toward the wide lake glimmering in the fading sun. "You do realize, don't you, that I own that?" Her smirk faltered, but only for a second. "And the parking lot where your residents leave their cars when they come here," he added firmly. For the first time, silence wrapped around Miss Carver. She had stepped into a game she didn't fully understand. The following days turned into a storm of letters and warnings. The HOA demanded compliance. Fines stacked higher and higher, and Daniel's mailbox overflowed with threats. But every time Ms. Carver tried to flex her power, Daniel quietly reminded her of the truth. One morning, as residents gathered for a lake picnic, Daniel posted a sign at the parking lot entrance: "Private property. HOA permission required." Gasps spread through the crowd. Without this lot, no one could enjoy the lake. Cars would clog the narrow roads, and visitors would have nowhere to park. Ms. Carver stormed over. "This is blackmail," she shouted. "No," Daniel replied calmly. "This is property law, something you should have checked before coming after me." The residents, caught in the crossfire, started to whisper among themselves. Some admired Daniel's courage, others worried about being trapped in the feud. But one thing was clear: the balance of power was shifting. Daniel wasn't just defending his home. He was showing everyone that the HOA's queen wasn't invincible. By midweek, tensions reached a breaking point. Families who loved the lake grew frustrated with Miss Carver's stubbornness. "Why can't we just work with Daniel?" one father asked at an HOA meeting. But Miss Carver slammed her gavel, declaring, "If he wins, we all lose. Rules must remain absolute." Her words sounded strong, but her confidence was cracking. Residents were tired of her endless fines, and Daniel had become a quiet symbol of resistance. His cabin, standing tall against their threats, inspired others who once felt powerless. Meanwhile, Daniel spent evenings on the porch, staring at the lake his grandfather had once fished. Memories of childhood summers, of his father teaching him to swim, grounded him. This wasn't just land. It was history, love, and belonging. He knew the HOA wouldn't stop, but he also knew that every chain they tried to throw around him only tightened around themselves. The lake wasn't just water, it was leverage. And leverage in the right hands could change everything. On Saturday, the HOA hosted a large community event by the lake. Dozens of cars poured in, families excited for swimming and barbecues. But when they reached the lot, Daniel was already there, leaning against his truck, arms folded. A bold sign stood behind him, parking closed. Private use only. Chaos erupted. Families argued, children cried, and board members scrambled. The HOA had promised a grand event, but without parking, the day collapsed before it began. Miss Carver stormed toward Daniel, fury etched on her face. "You can't do this." Daniel met her glare. "Yes, I can. You came for my cabin, my home. Now you've lost your lake." The residents turned, eyes shifting from Carver to Daniel. And in that moment, they saw the truth. He wasn't the villain. He was the only one brave enough to stand against her. Phones came out, cameras recorded, and the story began spreading far beyond the lake. What started as one man's eviction battle had now become a spectacle of justice. The next week was Ms. Carver's unraveling. News outlets picked up the story, painting her as a power-hungry president who trapped families in pointless battles. HOA members started resigning quietly, unwilling to go down with her. Daniel, meanwhile, filed a formal complaint with the county. He presented the deed proving his ownership of both the lake and the parking lot. Officials confirmed what Ms. Carver feared most. She had no claim. At the next HOA meeting, residents stood up one by one. "We're done with your bullying," a mother said. "Daniel has done more for this community than you ever have." Carver's gavel shook in her hand. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, now quivered. She had built her power on intimidation, but intimidation crumbles when people stop being afraid. For the first time, Daniel didn't even need to speak. The community spoke for him. Weeks later, the HOA removed their eviction notice, their threats, and their chains. Miss Carver quietly stepped down, her empire of control reduced to nothing. Daniel, however, didn't hold grudges. On a sunny morning, he called the community together by the water. Standing on the dock, he announced, "This lake isn't just mine. It belongs to all of us. My family protected it, and now I want to share it." He opened the parking lot again, free for residents to use, and together they celebrated with a picnic by the shore. Children splashed in the water, families laughed, and the air felt lighter than it had in years. The cabin stood tall, not just as Daniel's home, but as a symbol of resistance and hope. He had faced the HOA's wrath and won, not through force, but through patience, truth, and the strength of community. As the sun set, Daniel whispered, "Grandfather, we kept it safe." The lake rippled back like it understood. The battle was over, but the freedom it gave them would last forever.